welcome everybody to episode 12 of The Female Perspective from MXP Magazine. Joined today by a woman who is decorated in many disciplines of motorcycle racing, Shelby Turner. Shelby, how are you doing today?
Hi, yeah, I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on the show. Excited to be here and excited to talk with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me. I want to start at the beginning here. You've had a lot of success here, and I want to know where it all started. How did you get introduced to motorcycling?
Yeah, it started a very long time ago now. I was about 3 years old when my parents got me into it. My dad was new to the sport back then. He just got his first bike, and then my mom wanted a bike and got one, and then they were going to all the races, and I just, had wanted to be there too, and I wanted to race myself. So they signed me up. So I started on the PW50 and then just kind of worked my way up through the ranks and through the classes in Alberta. And we have a local track to me at home. So we were always out riding and practicing. And I have an older brother. And of course, him being a little older than I am, but not too much, we were just number one competitors, right? I always wanted to beat him growing up. I wanted to be as good as him, do the things that he was doing. So he really pushed me to become a better rider when I was growing up as a kid. And then, yeah, just kind of, I fell in love with the sport, fell in love with racing, and it just kind of took off from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, the sibling rivalry, right? Nothing like that will push you to be better. So you started in motocross here. At what point did you decide to branch out and try different disciplines of motorcycle racing?
So I guess I started in motocross because that's where my dad started. We followed the Alberta local motocross series for a few years. And then I think it was my dad and mom who kind of got burnt out of the moto scene. And they just wanted to try some different style of riding. They met some people who were doing off-road, and they joined the KMA club is what it was called back then. And we just started racing some off-road. I never truly quit moto. I just started also racing off-road with it. So got into the trees, got riding the harder technical trails, and then started doing that and working my way through like the off-road. But I never really left moto. We have a motocross track at my house, so we just always rode it, but we just didn't race as many races and didn't necessarily follow the series as close as we once did. So
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like trying all these different things made you a better motocross rider, a better off-road rider? Like the combination of doing all these different things, do you think it made you better?
yeah, absolutely. Looking back now, it was probably one of the best things my parents ever did for my racing career was get me out of the motocross and get me riding more things. As you know, there's not a lot of places you can go with moto. Even in Canada, it's a very small scene, and in America, it's even smaller, I feel. So to get me out and get me riding off-road and already having such a deep background and skill set in that has been, it's been awesome. And I find like once I get tired of riding one thing, if I switch to something else, then for whatever reason, I tend to get a little better at the other discipline. So, I mean, I was riding Endurocross and training and practicing Endurocross. I hadn't rode, off-road or like a national enduro type race for a few months. Went back after I was done racing Endurocross and ended up winning a national enduro. So it kind of plays hand in hand. And I think all the skill sets end up helping me and just keeping me motivated to keep riding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on a much smaller scale here locally, I'm from Minnesota. I find that doing, a hair scramble here and there, or, that just helps keep it fresh, like you said. And so it's cool that not only can you do this at a small level, but you can do this at a national scale level, like you've been doing also.
Yeah, it's been full on racing for me for the past 10 weeks. I think we're going on straight, and all national events. And it's been awesome. We're riding two different series. They don't really match how the series go. Like they aren't the same style of racing whatsoever. But I find riding one discipline actually helps the other. So it's been good, but it's definitely a busy schedule. There's a lot of off-road races, and it starts early in the year. So it's been a lot of fun though. And I mean, I've been traveling around and staying in South Carolina, so it's been good.
That's awesome. Let's go back to the motocross here for the highlights. You've won 3 WMX West championships. Which one was the most rewarding, and maybe which one was the most memorable of those championships?
So I actually won my first WMX title at 14 years old. That was my first year on a big bike, first year in doing the full Western National Series. And so I would have to say that that one was probably my most memorable one, and probably like one of my career highlights, just because of my age. And like back then it was a pretty big deal. There was a lot of girls lined up. There's a lot of fast girls, and I hadn't really made a name for myself yet. I was coming off of little bikes. People didn't really know who I was. And yeah, that one was really memorable. I also won 2016 and 17, I believe. And those ones were awesome too. I had a big gap between 2010 and 16, 17 when I won again. But yeah, they're definitely big accomplishments. Happy that I was able to do that. The women's pro motocross has never been easy to win out west. We've had good girls, good Canadians come up. We've had good Americans come up, and yeah, it's always been a really fun time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Uh, Now that you're no longer a teenager, you're an adult. What does it feel like now racing girls that are 14 that were kind of like you, maybe coming up and making a name for themselves, comparatively looking back on from your perspective on, your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to see the younger girls showing up and racing. It's what we need. We need to grow the sport, right? We need women in it. We need lots of girls getting excited about it and racing and doing all what I did. So it's really good to see. Unfortunately, I don't see as many younger women riding as like I did back when I was first coming up. It seems like you kind of go through waves and stages, but there's definitely a huge women's following that's coming around right now. And there's a lot of girls who are interested in the sport, which is, I mean, we have to start there, right? We have to have ladies who want to race, and then they get their kids into it. And then in a couple years, that's when we start seeing the really fast teenagers come through again. And I know there's a couple out there for sure. And there's a few even down here in the States that I'm racing against. And I just think back, like, man, if I was as fast as they were when I was that age, that would have been awesome. Even though in perspective for the times, I was pretty fast for how old I was. But there's, I think, 7 or 8 of us that came up right when I did. So I always had a lot to battle and a lot of women my age to race against. And it's kind of funny because we're still the ones who are getting older in the class, but we're still here racing and training and riding each other every weekend. So I kind of think that's funny, but
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess that's a good point too. Like, this sport has given so many people so many lifelong friendships, and not even, maybe not even friendship, just someone you compete against. Like, that's a value in itself, just to make those connections and have that for the rest of your life.
yeah, for sure. There's people that I've met from all over the world riding dirt bikes, and there's places that I would have never went to or traveled to myself if had I not, been riding a bike. So even that is like humbling experience in itself. Getting into the ISDE and meeting a lot of those girls from Europe who I wouldn't even know their names if I didn't go and race them head to head at a certain race and actually get to know them, because we're all on the trail together for 6 days straight. So yeah, it's been awesome. I think most of my friends that I hang out with now are not even from America necessarily. I have Australian friends, I have New Zealand friends. There's friends, like, we're from all over the place, and we're all here racing, trying to do the same thing, grinding it out week in, week out, trying to beat each other. So it's awesome.
Absolutely. So speaking of off-road, I want to kind of switch gears here a little bit. We've talked about the motocross success, but the off-road racing success, at what point, we've talked a little bit about it, but at what point were you deciding to go full steam ahead into the off-road racing at the national level in Canada?
I've been racing the national off-road in Canada. Geez, it had to have been the same year that like 2010, 11, 12 was when I was racing pro off-road, the women's class. And back then I raced Chantel by Kirk and Victoria Het, and and Felice Robichaud, I think, was in there back then. And it was awesome. The series actually went across Canada. They had like national format, like ISDE format racing. And, we battled all the time. And then we would even take our racing, we'd take it down to like down in the States and race Endurocross together. And sorry, my dog. And we would have fun doing that. And then there came a point when riding Endurocross in the States was just happened to be an area I was really, really good at. Really good at obstacles, really good at the technical, but it also had like the speed of motocross in it. So it was kind of like I'd been training my whole life to be an Endurocross star and not even really noticing it. So I got into the Endurocross pretty hard. We went to X Games for 3 years, racing Endurocross, and then I finally followed the series in 2016, and that's when I started my reign as a women champion for Endurocross down here in the States.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting that, all these different things have prepared you for this other discipline that wasn't really even on your radar. I guess maybe speak a little bit more about how you felt prepared, like just in the technical riding itself, maybe in the competition, mental toughness, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I raced a lot of motocross, so I had the speed, I had the start gate, knowledge and skill. I knew how to jump, and then riding the off-road series in Canada, our Alberta series is actually really, really technical. So we have a lot of very hard trails, very hard hill climbs, very hard rocks. It's not the easiest of riding, that's for sure. So growing up, it used to annoy me how hard the trails and everything were, because it felt like I was always constantly getting stuck or having to push or whatever. And then as I got older and started becoming stronger on my bike and kind of getting better at it, I went to started riding Endurocross, and I already had the rocks down. I already knew how to go over logs and going over pipes and stuff, like we'd already been doing that. So it's kind of like one of those things that just happened to transition really well. And I know Canada has three Endurocross champions over the years. Chantal Bykirk has won one or two, and I know Lexi Pichout from Calgary has won one title as well. So in the last 10 years, 7 of the national Endurocross titles went to Canadians. So that's pretty neat.
That's awesome. Uh, we've mentioned ISDE here a little bit, and I don't want to gloss it over because that's an accomplishment in itself. Just A, getting to the race, B, competing in it, and doing well at the race. Tell us a little bit about how that race is different, and maybe how being successful at a race that is that difficult feels to do well at.
Yeah, so the 6 day is what I would consider like the Olympics of dirt bike racing. It's kind of where all the countries come together and race an event it's just long, hard, and technical. And there's a lot of competition there for the women now. And it's kind of like the event that I look forward to the most as well, even though it's like one of the hardest ones I do. I'm always really excited for that atmosphere and that riding, and just seeing how I play out on a world schedule, on a world scale, because I race a lot, I train a lot, and over the years I've noticed like I've just been constantly improving in the ranks, or even just by time to the leaders, which is awesome. But the 6 days is different form of racing than what we have in Canada. I don't even think we have any format like that going on right now. It's called an enduro format. So basically you're racing a clock. You do a transfer section. The transfer section will take you about an hour to complete. It's usually not very difficult, just long. And then in that transfer section, you have what they call a special test, which is essentially where you get your time and where you're racing at the event. Usually a special test is like 6-7 miles, should take you 20 minutes to do one of their tests. And then once you get done that test, like you do one time through it, and then you move on and you do a next transfer section, and you do another test. And they have usually about 6 tests a day. And you're on your bike for about 8 hours, and you ride from 9 in the morning until 4 o'clock at night. And it's just like constantly following time. There's a whole bunch of rules in between. Like you can't go in early to certain sections. You can't go in late. You're just constantly following time and doing tests. And you ride all day long with 3 other girls who are your speed and your caliber, just judging by how you kind of fall through the times from the first day. So you get riding with these girls. Like I've rode 4 or 5 days with, an Australian or an American girl, or, girls from France will be on your minute, and you just ride, like you just become like friends, because you're literally just transitioning through the race together the whole time. So it's just it's an amazing experience. And, to do as well as I have is just awesome too. There's a lot, it's more than just racing. You have to do your own maintenance. So there's like, Every day you get 15 minutes at the end of the day to work on your bike. No one else can touch your bike. There's certain things you can't change. Like you have to have the same rims. So you have to do all your tire changes yourself. You can't do an engine swap, obviously, because you don't have enough time. So there's just a whole bunch of rules to it. So you have to make your machine, your body last that entire 8 hours on your bike for 6 days. And then you're expected to go out and like speed race these certain sections to get your time. So it's a wild event.
Absolutely. All these rules, right? Like you can only go here at this time, there at that time. The first time you did it, was it confusing?
The first time I did it, I was 18 years old and I'd never really rode anything like it. And it was the most stressful thing. And you're like, how am I ever going to remember any of these rules? Like, how am I going to remember that this? But it's funny because once you get going, you start realizing that I know how to ride a motorcycle. I know how to count time. I have girls who are on my minute who I know who they are at the start of the day. I have girls who are the minute ahead of me who I know who they are. And I have girls in the minute behind me who I know who they are. So you just start being like, well, if these girls in front of me go in or start leaving their pit and heading to the line, then I should be, like you just start doing it that way. And it's really not as bad as it's made out to be. You kind of need to know all these rules so that they're in the back of your head so that you like, if something happens out on the trail, you kind of understand like how much time you have, what you're allowed to do, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you had mentioned, the maintenance aspect of that race is pretty wild. Like, I don't know, I can't get a whole lot done in 15 minutes. What are the things that you focus on in those 15 minutes?
Yeah, the biggest thing is you need to get your tires changed. If you think about it, 8 hours on a set of tires might not seem a lot, but they get hot. The bibs start breaking down. The tires start breaking down. If you don't get those changed at the end of the day and you have to ride double, like 2 days, that's 16 hours on like a front or a rear tire. That's a long time. Yeah. And that could be seconds in a test that you're losing because you weren't able to change your tire. So it's kind of like and obviously you have to change your air filter. There's been a couple ISTEs where we're changing air filters every time we roll into like a check section. So you have to make sure you get your proper maintenance done. And then you also have to take into account that there's going to be parts you break along the way. So you have to be able to change those parts, make sure that you can ride your bike and then worry about the other maintenance. So typically in a maintenance section for me, if the day went well and I don't have any broken parts, it'll be a rear tire, a front tire. I will bleed my forks. I'll change my air filter. Someone else changes the oil. So I'll have an oil change done. And then typically I'll go scrape some mud off my bike, take a quick look over, make sure there's no loose bolts or anything. And then I'll roll it right into the paddock for the morning. So takes all in all that takes me about 12 minutes to do. You need to take into account 1 minute to get to Team Canada's pits, 1 minute to get to the impound. So yeah, I'm changing tires. I think a rear tire in 5 minutes, front tire in 3. That's like, pull the tire off. My dad will hand me a new tire. I'll put it back on and we'll put it on the bike and tighten everything up and away we go. So
that's gnarly. That is so fast. Can you imagine like, they have those like tire changing contests. Like I'm sure you just, win them all, right?
Well, it's funny because the more you do it and the more I've been changing tires, I realize it's not necessarily speed. It's knowing what to do next and exactly where to put your tire irons and how hard you need to push on it and where. Because I'm a small girl. Like I learned how to change when I first learned how to change tires when I was 18 years old. I had Clint Revere and Bob Reed help me. And if you don't know who they are 6'5" males, just big dudes. And Bob jumped on his front tire and 3/4 of it went on. And I just sat there and I looked at my mom. I was like, I'm 120 pounds. I can't do that. Like I physically can't do that. So over the years, I've adopted certain techniques and things that I do because of my size. And it's it's not awesome, but it is awesome. But I'm not strong enough to break a bead on a tire. So if you're pulling the irons really hard and if I'm struggling, I know I have to readjust because I'm not going to be able to pull that bead over. But what problems my brother and males have is they'll just get angry and they just pop that on. Well, then they break their bead. And then they have they don't know it, and then they go out and ride and their tire falls off. But it's kind of fortunate being my size. I I can't break a beat. Like, it takes a lot of force to be able to break a beat. So I've always just had to adjust and adapt to how I change tires. So over the past, I guess it's been 7 or 8 years, I became like a little bit of an expert at it in my own way. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like that theory that, okay, maybe I'm not strong enough, but I have a better technique or a better way of doing things applies to a lot of things in motorcycling. Even
Mhm.
just being a smaller rider on the bike goes a long way. Is there anything else that comes to mind that being small actually could be an advantage?
um, I mean, there's always like, I never need a more powerful than stock motorcycle. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, a lot of times you'll hear the guys on 250s saying like, oh, I have to get, a vortex box. I need it port and polished. Like, I need things to make this thing more powerful. I find my 250 has almost too much power all the time, but it's also carrying, 40 to 60 less like weight around. So I always have more power than a lot of, the guys do, just because of our weight and their size. So I find that a 250F is like more than enough power, and I probably don't ever need any more than what I have.
Hmm.
So, and then I mean, there's some good advantages and disadvantages to being like a little smaller. I'm not necessarily small. Like, I think I stand like 5'8", so I am pretty tall, which I'm happy about, because I can actually touch flat feet on my motorcycle, which goes a long ways when you're riding Endurocross and
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, if not, there's a lot of girls who are smaller who you see them like move around the bike in ways that you would never see a male rider have to do, or even probably be able to do. So, I mean, it's pretty neat. If you watch everyone's riding style, it's always a little different.
Mhm. Absolutely. And, motocross is one of those sports where you don't have to be, linebacker size to play, that position in football. Like, there's short people, small people, big people, tall people. Like, it's pretty cool that just anyone can hop on a motorcycle and with proper technique and do it well.
Yeah, and age too. There's no real age cap to it either. You start when you're two, and then I've rode with men who are like 75 years old, and they're out
Mhm.
there just riding, having a good time. So it's kind of nice to know that there's really no expiry on my riding. Unfortunately, there probably is an expiry on how fast I can go at my level and train as hard as I do. But as far as like just being able to ride, you can have a bike at any age and be able to enjoy it and have fun with friends and family. I know my parents have been down in the States for the last few months, just riding, and they're 50 plus 50 years old, and they ride like 3 or 4 times a week and just have a blast doing it. So I mean, it's awesome to see that, and know that there's no end point to riding. You can always ride and you can always improve. My mom's always telling me how she got better, and she always says, I'm getting in better shape, but I'm still not in as good shape as you. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, like our friendships that have lasted a lifetime, like just the ability
Mm-hmm.
to ride, barring serious injury, which we all know is, always possible. Like you
Yeah.
said, you can always ride a motorcycle. No, even if you head to the street or head to flat track racing, like there's so many
Mm-hmm.
different ways that you can adapt your riding to your age and skill level and everything that goes into it.
Yeah, and just enjoy it. I think the biggest part about us racers is that we don't get paid a lot of money to do it. So if we're here showing up, paying our own way to do it, then we truly do love the sport, and that's why we're here. And we want to do well, and we want others to do well, and we're just here because we all love dirt bikes, and we all have like this weird, thing in our brain that just won't let us leave it alone. So I know, just being down here and you talk to the girls, and we're all riding and training and trying to beat each other, and then at the end of the day, it's just like, man, we all just love our dirt bikes, and that's why we're here. So
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think sometimes when you become so competitive or so focused on the competition itself, like some people lose that, focus on, oh, we're all just doing this because we love it. Um,
Mhm.
did you ever experience anything like that? Or were we always kind of living in the moment and grateful to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I've never had a moment like that really. When I was growing up, I didn't think it was possible to be, just a full-time female dirt bike racer. Back then the women's racing wasn't as big. There wasn't a lot of money in it, and there just wasn't anywhere that I thought I could go to be able to do it. So I went and got like a normal 9 to 5 job. When COVID hit, actually, I worked full time for the first time ever doing like my actual work job. and I just realized how much I missed racing, how big of a part of my life that was. And as I started getting older, I kind of realized like I can't be at this level that I want to be at for very long. So if I don't go out now and try and race for a living now, then I'm never going to do that. And I'm never going to get to experience something like that. So I made the choice in 2020 to work on getting a visa and getting down to the States and just riding and racing full time. And 2021 was like my first year full in the States racing. And so this is my second year doing it. And I don't regret my decision at all. Money's tight every now and then. And, you know, you have to win to make money, and you have to race every weekend. Otherwise, I mean, that's just how we get paid and how things work. But I mean, I don't regret it at all. And every day I wake up knowing that, you know, I could be at work right now in the cold in Canada, and instead here I'm down in Florida or South Carolina and just enjoying my dirt bike and everything that I love to do. And I wouldn't change that for anything. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's you know, some people would see it as sacrifice, but for us, it's more of an opportunity, and it's all about mindset, I guess.
yeah, for sure. I think everything in life is a mindset. I know there's always places I can go and make money and move towards, and but right now I know that this is making me the most happy, and I really enjoy doing it. And I think a big part to life is just, you know, finding what makes you happy. And if riding dirt bikes is keeps me out of trouble, and I'm smiling day in, day out, then that's what I'm going to do until I decide, you know, everything's too old to do it at the level that I want anymore. So
Absolutely. So you mentioned this is your second year full time in the U.S. What series are you competing in? What's your plans for the rest of the year?
yeah, so I'm contracted to do Endurocross, but as I mean, most people know, Endurocross doesn't happen until September. End of August is when the series starts, September, and then we kind of go from there until November, and it's like pretty technical, pretty full on schedule after that. So the first half of the year, there isn't a lot going on. So I do a lot of hard enduro events, usually the East Coast, because that's where I'm based out of. It's pretty expensive to be traveling to the West and the East Coast of America back and forth all the time. So I try and just stick to the East. But there's also the GNCC, which is Grand National Cross Country Series. It's the biggest off-road event probably in the world, I would say. I don't think I've ever been to off-road events that are quite as big as the GNCC. And that's where all the competition is. That's where the women from all over the world show up and are racing right now. So just me being competitive and, you know, with my ISDE back, like wanting to do well at the ISDE, I know I have to race the girls who are the best. And I have this chunk of time in the start of the year where I'm able to go to the GNCC events and just get my butt kicked by these women. So it's been awesome. It's been a humbling experience. I've had a lot of fun. Arlie, hey. Sorry, my dog did something.
That's okay.
And so it's been good. I love the GNCCs. There's, you know, 7 or 8 girls that have all been on the podium in the last like 2 years, and
Wow.
we're all just competing for that top spot. So it's awesome. It's fun, and that's a wild form of racing.
Yeah, long time. I have a friend here. She races a step down from pro. I don't know what they call it, B class or the women's B, I think.
Yeah.
And she goes to all the GNCCs, and you know, I've asked her like, how does racing here in Minnesota prepare you for GNCC? And she's like, it doesn't. I'm like, okay, guess you know my concept is off here because I'm more of a motocrosser. But what about GNCC is particularly difficult for you, given your experiences and your background in off-road riding in Alberta?
So hands down, the hardest thing for me is the lappers. Now, that sounds a little weird, but round one, we had 864 bikes on the track with me, and we are the first line to go.
Yeah.
I've never in my entire life raced a race that had that many people on it's a 12-mile track. 12-mile track with 864 people, all of which are like, I think I was 5th overall. So that's like 860 people who are slower than you.
Hmm.
So it's absolutely insane. You get one lap, you get lap one. That's an amazing lap. You're all by yourself. You're with the girls, you're chasing them. Lap two, you start catching people like the backpack. And then by like halfway through lap two, you are literally like, there's no end in sight for these lappers. It's just like you're constantly finding new wild lines to get by, just like flocks of people. It's
Mhm.
insane. It's absolutely insane.
Mhm.
And like a lot of people say, oh, it's wide open quad trail. The quads race it, so it's wide open high speed. I'm like, I've never seen a quad rider ride some of the stuff that they put them through. Like
Yeah.
their tight tree sections that the quads go through are tight on a bike. Like
Mhm.
we're like 5-6 feet wide through the trees. There's lots of lines you can take, but it's also like there's a lot of trees and it's mud holes and there's no hill, there's no mountains. Like I come from an area where there's a lot of mountains and stuff. So as far as like technical, it's not necessarily as technical riding as I do, but I've never been able like seen that many people on a track before. So literally the last 2 years, the difference between me and on the podium a lot of times and still now is just getting through lappers. It's just a struggle. So, but those top girls are beating me by 5 minutes in a 2 hour long race. And I just can't, I'm like, I'm going extremely fast.
And
And like it's so frustrating because like I was doing a sprint race this weekend and I rode some of the best sprint sections I've ever rode. And then I'll look down, I'll be 20 seconds on a test slower than Taylor Jones. I'm like, but mind you, she is 7th, 8th overall at the race.
Mhm.
And I'm like 25th. So it's just like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
But that's where the learning is. And that's where like, I'm really driven and motivated right now to work on my speed and get faster. So that's what I've been doing. It's been hard, but it's also been a lot of fun. So
Yeah. Yeah, that is wild. That is so many people. Like people talk about lappers and supercross and, motocross and you put that in perspective, you're like, oh, okay, like the top 20 fastest guys in the world on supercross, that's not too bad.
yeah, and they all know how to ride. You get these people in the C class that it's their first time on a race or whatever. I don't know why they picked a GNCC to go to, but you have like these women who are just like we're A level riders riding with C level
Mhm.
riders, And I know just talking to the guys who race the afternoon race, which is that 3 hour race, we don't have the same race. We don't have the same. It's for a race being 2 hours later on the same course. They are completely separate events because the 3 hour race is all about you have to ride at your fastest level for 3 hours long.
Mhm.
And generally, most of the people on the track know how to ride. They understand the concept of like staying in your lane and not crisscrossing, and most of them can ride the course. So you're not really dealing with what we are, and they usually don't have as many riders on the course. So it's kind of funny how the same race can be just so different for the men pro versus like the women pro. And I know a lot of times the men will say like, you couldn't pay me enough to ride with those guys, like at the level we are. So
Mhm.
kind of wild, but it is what it is. And I mean, it's the way I look at it is all the women's pro have to get through that lapper and that traffic. So it's the same for everyone. So it's been the difference between, 2 years ago, Shelby and Shelby today is I used to look, 3 or 4 feet in front of my front number plate. Now I'm looking like a mile ahead. It feels like trying to pick
Mhm.
lines, but yeah. So it's just wild.
So the women are in this separate race than the pro men. Is that something the women want changed? Are they okay with it? Like, is there even an opportunity for that to change?
That is like the most of debate question in the GNCC series right now, I would say. Um, there's pluses and minuses to both sides of it. If you think about it, the second we move up to the 3 hour race, we're going to lose our credibility. Like we're not going to be the stars of that afternoon race because we're kind of the stars of the morning race. We're the first row. We get paraded in. We have all the pros in the afternoon are able to come and watch our lines and cheer for us. We have all the manufacturers there who are able to actually watch us ride before their men go out. When you get to the 3 hour race, if they put us in with the 3 hour race, we're just going to be mixed in with another like group of like there were just more riders on the track for the guys,
Mhm.
which would be nicer. We wouldn't have nearly the lap traffic. We would be the lappers at that point. And the course changes. The course is 2 hours more destroyed. You got faster bikes, so it's going to be rougher and just more technical. And then you have to take into account you have another hour of racing. So I think adding the hour to the class, I think there's 6 or 7 of us who would be absolutely fine. But I also think that the remainder of the class would not show up or wouldn't sign up in women's pro just because they don't want to race the 3-hour race, which I don't want to see. I want numbers. So for me, I say like we have to stay in the morning race because we get 16 girls to round 1, women's pro. And that's what's building our class, is having numbers. So if we move up to the 3-hour race and we only get 6 or 7 girls sign up, then it's kind of like why are we putting ourselves through that much more to be, there? But it's honestly the most debated question in GNCC. It goes back and forth all the time. Everyone has a different opinion. Everyone sees it differently, and I see both sides. I'm just here for the first half of the season, so I'll ride whatever. But yeah.
Well,
Who knows
I
what the right answer is?
I got the hard-hitting questions here, I guess.
Yeah.
So looking even farther into the future, what are your goals for racing? Are there any other kinds of disciplines of motorcycle racing that you'd like to try?
I've kind of done it all that I've wanted to do. For me now, it's like, honestly, I want to be on the podium at a 6-day, like an individual. I've come up short. I've been fourth a couple of times. I was fourth before there was like what I would say a lot of women showing up. So I'd like to be on the podium for like an outright individual for the 6-day. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. I would also like to do like more GNCC rounds and be on the podium and be like a face for all those rounds. I've been fourth every single round this year, which is a pretty big bummer.
Yeah.
So like just off, but and then Endurocross. I love riding Endurocross. That's like one of my favorite things to do. So I'm going to keep continuing to ride that and do just some more extreme and hard enduro events. So
that's awesome.
I'm just planning on keep doing what I'm doing and just getting better at it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's tough to add anything else into that
Yeah.
into that busy schedule, but it's pretty cool that, you're making this work for you. There aren't a whole lot of women in motorcycling that can just do that. So that's an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, there's definitely not. You could probably count on both hands, how many women are out there just racing dirt bikes. And so I consider myself very lucky and like privileged that I'm able to do it. And I've just been having so much fun, and my bikes have been awesome. My sponsors who've been backing me for years have been awesome. So my parents and my family, I wouldn't be able to do this without the support of my mom and dad, who now have growing up and as you're a teenager are at every single race, and they're the reason that you get to the line on time. They're the reason that you get to the gate and all the things. And then now transitioning to getting older, I'm at every race pretty well by myself, and they have to watch from 36 hours away and just follow live timing and stuff. So it was definitely a big change at first, but now that I have like my own schedule and how I do things, it's not so bad. But it's definitely a little weird, the shift that you kind of go through when you stop being a kid and you start like being more of an adult and doing it yourself. So
That's awesome. In conclusion of this podcast, I would like your advice to any other girls or women in the sport who may be new, maybe, veterans of the sport. What is your advice for other girls and women in motocross or off-road racing?
Yeah, my advice is to just keep riding and have fun. So what I tell everyone is, if you feel like you're struggling in one discipline and you can't get any better, and you're losing interest in it, like you're just riding moto and you're just not having fun, you're not getting better, go try something else. There's tons of different styles of racing. There's tons of different things you can go do, different groups of people that you can get in and meet and go ride with. So like that's my biggest advice for anybody coming up is make sure you're having fun. The biggest part to riding is we all do it because we love to do it. So you have to go find, a group that you have fun with and places that you like to ride, and just get out there and have fun. So yeah, that's about all I can say about that.
Absolutely. Well, Shelby, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us. We'll see you in a couple weeks for another episode of The Female Perspective.